Hello.
Well, sir,
What would you like to know?
I would like to know your first and last name and spell your last name.
I am Stephen Turner. Last name is Turner.
And today's date is October the 6th, 2017, but we're going to reminisce here about things in your past that you probably don't even remember until I ask you the question. Then you'll remember.
Then it'll just pop up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you grew up in Aurora, Indiana.
I did grow up in Aurora, Indiana.
Tell us about the circumstances of your youth, where you grew up, what street address, and we'll start with that.
I grew up in a house on 421 Sunnyside. And at the time that I was growing up, I was the fifth son of Ben and Lucy Turner. I had 4 older brothers, and eventually there would be 2 more added. But I was the 5th of the 5 Turner boys.
So start with the oldest. Who was your oldest brother, and then go down from there. And if you can remember and know the years they were born.
My oldest brother was Kenny Turner. He was born in April of 45.
Okay.
My next brother was Lucian Turner, and he was born in October of 46. The third brother was a Dennis, and he was born, I guess, I'm hoping I get this right, but I think December of 47.
Okay.
Then Ben was born in January of 49. And I was born in February of 50, 1950. And as far as I know, we moved from Conwell Street, which was 1 or 2 houses, 3 houses maybe down from the cottage. And my parents, when I guess after I for the room, moved to 421 Sunnyside.
What year was that?
Well, as far as I know, sometime in 50.
Okay. And then you had 2 younger brothers. Tell us about their names and their months and years of their birth.
Well, Randy was born in June of 1955,
Okay.
and I was 5 years old. And at that time, I went, while my mom was in the hospital with Randy, I went and lived with her sister for a week, or stayed with her sister, Susie, up in E-Town. She lived in the, I guess, she lived in a subdivision up there behind what would be the Crossroads now in Elizabethtown, or E-Town.
Tell us your mom's maiden name and your sister. What was their last name?
I can't tell you all my mom's sisters because I don't
No,
even.
not all their maiden names.
Their maiden names were Kidwell. They came to Indiana after, I hope I'm getting this right, but after the Depression in the 40s and are in the 30s, they moved to Indiana from Kentucky. They lived on a big dairy farm up on State Route Road 1, which today it's where the golf course is up there. Not Hidden Valley, but there's a golf course. Sugar Ridge Golf Ridge was their farmland. I didn't know there wasn't much talk about the Kidwells. I do know my mom was from a large family, and I have since found out that there was at least 6. She had 5 sisters and 6 brothers, and they grew up on a farm, and farms in Kentucky, and also here in Indiana.
We'll come back and talk about your mom, Lucy. Tell us about your youngest brother.
My youngest brother was born in March 1959.
What was his name?
And his name was Michael Turner. He became the last of the Turner boys. That would be the 7 Turner boys to Ben and Lucy Turner. He would later come to have to follow all the brothers through the Aurora High School, and he was fortunate enough to be in the class of 1977, and when they won the first game of the Semi-States and advanced to the final 8, or the final 8 during in 1977. And with him graduating from that year, there was 18 consecutive years that a Turner boy was in the Aurora High School.
That's amazing. So tell us, I want to talk more about your mom and dad. Tell us what they did for a living and your impressions of them, and how they raised the boys and what they did for a living.
Well, it was a different time, and I do know that when we moved to, and I don't know what year, but somehow or another, that when we moved to Sunnyside, 2 oldest brothers, Kenny and Lucian, they went to stay with our grandmother, Emma Turner, and she was our grandmother out on Conwell Street. And we never looked at them as brothers, but we just thought they were uncles. But we always was together around holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving. We always went to grandmother's house for Thanksgiving and Christmas. We always went to my aunt's house in Ohio for Thanksgiving, or not necessarily Thanksgiving, but Easter. So we always had a big Easter dinner, big turkey, food, pies, desserts, you name it. It all went with the dinner.
Talk more about your mom and dad.
My mom, I think my mom kept us all in order. Dad had 2 jobs. My dad worked for the box factory at the time, which was on 50 and at the bottom of Sunnyside. And he worked at a box factory 8 hours a day. And after he would get done with the box factory, he would go home. He would come home after that, and he would lay down. And then he would come to the town, and he would run his business. We got to be known as Turner's Liquor. It started on the lower 2nd Street sometime in the late 40s. He started up. I can't tell you the exact date. I just know that it was always in the family's house, and we lived in the lower end of 2nd Street, and then later on he moved from the lower end of 2nd Street, and he moved into, at the time, where People's Building and Loan was a little part of the building, but it was also Probst's dairy. And he had his liquor store that was in that building, and there was also a couple but that wasn't a part of the dad's store. But I remember at a very early age of going in there at times during the day. We grew up. We started our education at St. Mary's. We were in the Catholic school. We had to go to school every morning. You had to be there by a certain time. We all met in the classroom. We all went over and marched to the church and went to Mass, and then we went to school. And it was just a different time. It was the 50s. We didn't understand it, but that's how we started out. My mom kept us in line. Mom made most of our clothes. And at that time, you wore dress pants to school and a dress shirt. And so my mom made most of my shirts and my pants. And we always had good shoes to wear for school. I might not have had shoes in the summertime, but ran around barefooted anywhere in Aurora. You ran barefooted from the end of May till school started again, and then you'd end up getting new shoes again for the school year. That's just how I remember it.
And what did you do during the summertime, during your free time away from school?
Play. I played. I was the little boy that just played. Eventually, somewhere along the line, I met friends with Greg and Steve Mendel that lived up the street, and that's where you would probably find me 5 out of 6 out of 7 days a week would be at the Mendel's house. And the Mendel's house, in their backyard, we look at it now and we say, how did we ever? But there was a basketball court back here. We also played baseball. We played probably every sport. And now you look at it and we say, how was there any room for us to play?
Mr. Trump. Had to say hi before I walked over next door.
That's okay. Thank you. What you up to tonight?
I just thought I'd come down and see who was around. I'm going over to next
You gonna
door.
go over see Bobby?
Yeah.
Okay.
I figure there'll be a few of them around there.
Oh yeah, there'll be a few more of them over there.
So in and around the neighborhood, what was there to do? You went to the Mendels. What else did you do? Where did you go?
Well, there was the city park. We always went to the city park to play ball. I mean, there was always a ball game at the city park. It was before there was ever a swimming pool there. We probably swam more time to Hogan Creek, or the creek behind the Aurora City Park. We probably swam in it more than we ever swam in a city pool until we grew up.
What other buildings do you remember there around the park?
Remember any the buildings?
Yeah,
well,
before there was a pool.
Well,
think about what structures were there when you were growing
well,
up?
when I was growing up there, basically it's still the same thing. But what I remember growing up is there was the big pavilion. We call it a pavilion today. I remember roller skating in the pavilion. There was behind the pavilion, there was a small, it was an uncovered shelter, and there was nothing to it. Well, today they call it the Leon Kelly Civic Center, and they have enclosed the building. And I mean, every time you was down there, it was like they had this kitchen part, and it was just an empty end of the building. And you always wonder, well, what's this ever going to be used for? But and then in the 60s, I joined the Boy Scouts and started going to the Boy Scout troop there in the park. And today it's Troop 637, and it has been moved. But when I went to the Boy Scouts, it was side where the modern day swimming pool is. And so every Monday night, you could find us in the city park for scout meetings. And I mean, there was 4, what they called were patrols. And just like the change of seasons, there was camporees and campouts for every season, and everyone would have its own contest of tying knots, whether identifying leaves and the biggest thing for me growing up was going to summer camp in the summer, because it was a week at Camp Louis Ernest in down below Newport, or not Newport, but DuPont, Indiana. It's down below Jeffersonville, or going to Madison on 421. But I remember going down there. I remember one time of going on a trip with the Boy Scouts, and we went to Fort Knox. Unfortunately, when I was little, I couldn't go very far in a car or anything because I get motion sickness. So I remember going down there a couple times and then hanging out the bus and everything because I'd be sick. So going places in a car was not a fun ride for me. But I had a good time. We went everywhere. I was in the Boy Scouts. We went to a trip. Before I was 16 years old, I went to Washington, D.C. and seen all the modern monuments today. We had a trip to the Smoky Mountains. We seen black bears. Swam in the coldest streams that you could have swam in when we were little, and it was ice cold. And
colder than Hogan Creek. Huh?
Colder than Hogan Creek. Yes, it was in the Smoky Mountains, but those were some of the best times that I can remember growing up, because you never had any worry. You always was out doing something. Nobody ever sat at home wondering waiting for a phone call. So, as a matter of fact, waiting on a phone call, we had a digit, and our phone number was a 127R, and it also was a party line. And lots of times you'd have to get off the phone and let somebody else get on, but most of the time it seemed like it was always our grandma calling to talk to somebody in the family. So then in 65, going to St. Mary's, played on the basketball teams from the 5th grade on through the 8th grade, and had very good fun memory of playing on the Catholic basketball team. And then after leaving St. Mary's, went to Aurora High School, and I believe our first class that we started into is they was dividing up because there was not enough room at the high school, and we got put in at the Northside building. So I do remember starting Aurora High School at the Northside building. And it was also when I got introduced into football. And from then on in, every year for the next 4 years, it was Aurora High School football on the big football field. And sometime in the spring, it would be our swimming pool. Because it would flood out. And when we would practice football, you would always see if you could tackle somebody and land on a fish head or whatever, because there was a swamp that was back there at the back end of the football field. But I remember the first day in '65 going to the first practice as a freshman. You went in this room and they said, "Here, have at it." And there were pants, jerseys, there were pads, and nothing was complete. You had to put it together and make it work. I mean, compared to the helmets today, none of them fit you. You just had to make do, and you had to learn how to fit them and put in your pads and get ready for football. And it was intimidating, but at the same time, it was enjoyable time. And so for the next 4 falls, it was preparing for football for the Aurora High School Red Devils.
And as you think back on that, who are some of the, name your coaches and some of the guys you played with on the team and some of their names and some of the things you remember. So coaches and co-teammates.
Well, we had 3 coaches. My first coach, and it was the first year, was Dwayne Brown, and he just recently got voted into the South Dearborn Hall of Fame 52 years after. But as the winningest coach for 3 years, we won the Eastern Indiana Athletic Conference championship 2 years in a row. It probably would have been 3rd year if we would have had him, but we didn't have him our senior year. So he was, to us, he was the modern day Tom Landry. When we had our first football game and he walked into the dressing room for the pregame, it was like Tom Landry came through the door. He had it on his hat, and he got your attention, and he made you really want to work hard. And then for 3 years, it was Dwayne Brown, it was Harley Heim was line coach, Darrell Ellinghausen was the freshman coach at that time, and David Glenn was also an assistant coach. And some of the best times that I can think of is playing the football and being at the Boy Scouts growing up in Aurora, Indiana. I mean, there just didn't seem like there was no place I'd rather be than in Aurora, Indiana. And then after high school, I did make it to where I was able to go to Grand Junction, Colorado, and I was offered a opportunity to come out for junior college. At that time, I guess they didn't call them small schools; they called them junior colleges, and they were 2-year university. But they offered me a chance to come out to play football and to try out for the football team. And I went to, it was called Mesa Junior College. And my first year there, I did make the team, and I did get my first year of college out there. And we won our first 4 games, and we were ranked 3rd in the nation in junior college. And then we lost 3 games in a row after that. But it was fun for the first 4 weeks of that. And that ended up being my last year of playing for football. And needless to say, I found out other things came naturally, and I did not go back. And then when I came back to Aurora, it wasn't too long. In 1975, you got draft numbers, and I had a low enough draft number to where I knew I was going to go, and I remember in 1971, I got sent to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in February, and it was colder than, well, we'll just say it was cold. And it was snowing when we went there, and what would have been a half an hour bus trip from the St. Louis airport to Fort Leonard Wood ended up being 3 hours. So it was in a snowstorm, needless to say. And then I remember then they told you we would be able to sleep in, and it seemed like our heads hit the pillow, and then next thing you know is rattling, beating garbage cans and being thrown down there, and it was time to get up and get at it. Needless to say, that started my Army career, which was next in my life. And so for the next 2 years from that, I was in the United States Army from 1971. And everywhere I went, I did not know I was going to do that. But then I ended up going to the MP school. I got in trouble with an MP because I kept on going to get out of the post and go on my weekend pass, but you couldn't wear your boots with your civilian clothes at the time. That was considered a no-no, but I kept on trying to sneak off base, and I remember the last time I tried to get out through the gate, and the MP caught me and sent me back to to my unit and told me to get right, because I wasn't going to wear my dress shoes, because my dress shoes were shines for inspection, and I did not want to touch my dress shoes. But the boots were another thing. I could wear them every day, and they would shine up and they would be fine, but they didn't have to be ready for inspection unless they were on me. So after that happened, in 73, I was discharged. I came back. I stayed in the area a little while. I met a lady from Houven, Ohio, and we met, and she became my first wife. And in 1975, she was pregnant, and needless to say, I would find myself going to an Army recruiter and inquiring about going back in the Army. And at that time, you got drafted. You had 6 years, 2 years on active duty, then you went 2 years on active reserve, and 2 years on inactive reserves. And they did call you up on your 2 years. And so I was able to go back into the Army in 1975 with my same pay grade as when I got out. And all I had to do was be sent to Fort Stewart, Georgia, which they were just starting a new concept in the Army at the time. And I remember going down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and reporting in, and said, I got orders to report here. They looked at me and they said, you got what? And I told them again, I said, I got orders to be here. And it ended up being that for the next 18 years, I would end up serving in the Army till 1993, when I finally retired with 22 years in the military service.
Wow.
20 years active and 2 years on the reserve. And from there, I came home, and I just messed around a little while since I've been home. And then the next thing I know, I'm working for the city of Aurora in the Parks Department.
Where you spent your youth.
Huh?
Where you spent your youth.
Where I spent my youth, yes. I came because I thought I had to pay back the dues from when I was a kid for all I did in the park. So I came back and thought and now I think overpaid what I did in the parks. Because we weren't ever really destructive, but, you know, I mean, we respected the property and we never destroyed anything, but, you know, some things did get broken and you can't say we really trashed it because we never really ran around with, you never had pop cans in, you had pop bottles. And nobody kept pop bottles because you can turn them in for 2 cents. At Abby's grocery store there on Manchester Street off of Park Avenue, and you get 5 bottles and go take them and wash them home and take them in there and get 10 cents and get you 2 bags, get you 2 packs of baseball cards in the 50s. And I wish I would have only known what baseball cards was going to be worth, because I probably had them all. But I'm just glad that I was born and I had the opportunity to live in Aurora, Indiana. I don't think there's any other place that I would have rather grown up. Of course, I don't think you ever miss. You're never away from home. You just leave temporarily and then you come back.
What binds you to Aurora to say what brings those feelings up in you? What occurred? What things happened that makes you think and feel like that?
Oh, I still think it's got to do with family. You still come back because you have family here, and having 6 brothers. But since I've been back, 1 brother has died. His name was Lucian. Out of the 7 of us, Lucian passed away in 2001. My dad died of cancer in 1975. And he probably had cancer before they even had any knowledge of what cancer was. So, and my mom didn't. My mom stayed was here until 1999 when she finally passed away. She was 24 years later.
Talk more about your mom. She was quite a businesswoman. Tell us about some.
Well, my mom was a businesswoman. She kind of kept the family going. She kept the Turner liquor store, and then she bought a. After my dad had died, she also became the proprietor of the motel on US 50.
What's the name of that?
I'm trying to think of what the name of it is. One is Hillcrest, and it's on the other side from the Hillcrest, so it's not the Hillcrest, but right now my short memory does not let me remember.
That all happened pretty much while you were gone, wasn't
that part of it happened while I was gone, but she still had the motel when I came back, and I just enjoyed the area. I have a lot of friends in the area. We get a bump into one another every now and then, and we just have fun. I really enjoy getting together with the class and planning for class reunions. Our class will be coming next 18-19, our class will be their 50th year, so that'll be our 50th year, and that will be the end of the 60s group from the Aurora High School.
Graduated in 1969.
I graduated in the spring of 1969, and ever since then, it's just, couldn't ask for a better life.
Talk about when every year we have the Farmers Fair, we have Devil's Den, we have now working on the Aurora Museum. Talk about your involvement in that and what you think what's good about that.
Okay, well, what's good about, I don't know if there's anything good about the Farmers Fair. You have a lot of people that talks good about the Farmers Fair, and it brings back the little kid in everybody, no matter how big or how old you get. There's something about walking up 2nd Street in the middle of the street and seeing how many people you can recognize and wave to and just say, hey, how's it going? But there's nothing like walking up 2nd Street, I think, in a fair and cotton candy, or whether it's a caramel apple or a candied apple or you name it.
Elephant ear.
Elephant ear. There's something about going up 2nd Street but when you run into somebody, you sit there and you have a 5 or 10 minute conversation, and it's like you guys never ever really did leave each other. Working for the city, I work in the parks. Got to keep, no matter what happens, I gotta go check the parks every day.
Talk about the Devil's Den.
The Devil's Den. Through the Devil's Den in the last 4 years, now we're starting what they want is the memory of the Aurora High School, bringing up the Aurora, starting the Aurora Museum. So I'm able to come in contact and enjoy seeing what we can do to get the interest and fire up the interest of former Aurora Red Devil people that come in here that was before me and after me, and wanting to make something go of the Aurora High School, because everybody's got memories, and they start with the school, and all your friends went to school. So when we were young, if you wanted to hang out with your friends, you went to school. You didn't stay at home. You didn't have to skip school or play hooky or anything, because all your friends were at school if you didn't go.